For those of you who have just returned, welcome back to the V20 2022 Summit Values at the Center. And as we have mentioned earlier, in this summit, we will officially launch the V20 2022 Communique. So this year, the Communique adapts Compass Education's framework of the Sustainability Compass, which focuses on nature, economy, well-being, and society.
The V20 2022 Communique provides a comprehensive policy recommendation with the intent to add depth understanding of values in public policy. Therefore, the V20 2022 Communique proposes a potential solution of a value-based policy recommendation that centers around the G20 priority issues. Entering the second session of the day, this time we will have a Value Steering Committee panel discussion. And on this session, we will have Ibu Pamela Doherty, the V20 co-founder and V20 2022 Value Steering Committee lead, also the CEO of Axia Origin UK.
Nice. And joining us online, we have Dr. Iwan Syahril, the Director General in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, also Chair of G20 Education Working Group 2022 Indonesia, and last but not least, Dr. Saad Al-Khalaf, Founding Partner and Vice President of Arawat Group, Saudi Arabia, as the panelists.
Now, let us introduce our facilitator, also speaker for this session, Dr. Ghazi bin Zager. He is a V20 founder and V20 2020 Sherpa. He is a member of the Shura Council, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Dr. bin Zager is the founder, owner, and chairman of Wisal Development Center. Wisal provides total solutions for holistic human, institutional, and national development and transformation. To all speakers, panelists, facilitator of the Value Steering Committee panel discussion, the stage and the screen is yours.
Greetings Bali, greetings Indonesia. Thank you for your warm welcome. Terima kasih. Suksama. I have pleasure in leading this next session, which focuses on the work of the Value Steering Committee. We've been asked to look at the values of G20 as an institution. First of all, I'll present the outputs of our project and then move into a panel discussion with our guests. I've decided to take on the role of facilitating and moderating that discussion instead of Dr. Ghazi, because I really want Dr. Ghazi's experience as one of the founding members and the original V20 Sherpa to be shared with you all. G20 is a globally recognised and respected institution working on an increasingly challenging agenda. I'd like you to imagine a G20 that operates from a position of deep values awareness, where there is alignment on a common set of values, where there is clarity and respect on unique values across nations, and where there is understanding of the values of difference. For the G20 to reach its full potential, it needs to operate in an environment that supports highly effective cooperation and collaboration. To me, that means being values aware. As this spectrum describes, people come together to cooperate in many different ways. The first, most basic form of cooperation is trying to align our own decisions and policies to reduce conflict. Such a world results in a mostly competitive environment where we each fight to implement the things that matter most to us. An evolution of this way of thinking is to move on to the next type of cooperation, to align based on our interests too. But with our world today, we are facing challenges unlike before. Thank you. Terima kasih. Is that better? No? Can you hear me better? Okay, thank you. But with our world today, we are facing challenges unlike before. We are ever more connected, and our world is more a ship than it has ever been, but a ship without a captain. This makes global communities like the G20 have an opportunity to be more values-driven and to enable that strong sense of collaboration. It's no longer sufficient just to align on decisions or interests. We need to go to a deeper level of alignment. Understanding each other's motivations. Of course, our motivations are always on show, but sometimes they are hidden or only partly on show, leaving other parties to make assumptions, to draw conclusions, or maybe not present their full selves to a situation. We don't give ourselves the best chance of success. This is where values come in, the third type of cooperation. Values underlie and connect everything that we do. They are so core to us as unique individuals, it's like how we breathe. So when we come together as a group of people, an organisation or a team, we bring our values with us. Collectively, that can be extremely powerful, but it really takes vulnerable leadership to get the most out of that team. So what can we observe about the values of G20 as an institution? Well, we can learn a lot about where they place their focus and how they express themselves to others. We have carried out analysis of the G20, its focus and expressed values, through analysing their key output each year, the declaration. We have approached this analysis in two different ways, looking at where their energy and focus is through the lens of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and also looking at their expressed values, how they use language to express what's important to them. We've used different analytical methods to do this analysis. For the SDG analysis, we used natural language processing to find the words that relate to values and to discard the words that don't. We then created word pairings to make sure the meaning was interpreted correctly. Those word pairings were then analysed against every year's declaration document from 2008 to 2021. We took a more qualitative approach to the values assessment, where we undertook a literature review and sought out the values that were used in those documents year on year. In this moving image, you can see the cumulative occurrences of terms relating to the SDGs each year from 2008 to 2021. So this is an additive picture of when terms are used in each of the declarations. Of course, there's no surprise that SDG 8 dominates this picture, decent work and economic growth. There's no surprise bearing in mind the initial priorities of G20. In this next image, I've taken out SDG 8 so you can more clearly see the other SDGs and their prominence year on year. You can more clearly see the movements of each of the SDGs as they've received more attention from our G20 community. So here I've summarised the whole picture of the SDG analysis, and there are three clear groupings that have emerged. Those areas at the top, which seem to be consistent themes, a block in the middle with increasing level of focus, and 6 areas at the bottom of this slide with relatively little attention from a G20 perspective. Now, I show this slide without judgment or criticism, and it raises for me some questions. I wonder what the level of consciousness is within G20 for these choices. And I wonder what this picture would look like if a different community had collaborated. Say, for example, the community across the developing world. The second area of analysis is looking at expressed values in each of the declarations. There is a set of consistently referenced values that occur in each year from 2008 to date. Stability, resilience, inclusion and multilateralism. You may find there's no surprises there, but it's also a pleasing picture from my perspective. Maybe resilience and stability, not surprising with the heavy focus on financial matters, economic stability and growth, but really good to see inclusion in all its forms, and multilateralism, which we've heard a lot about already today. There are also other values that have emerged each year, and you can see on this slide where they've appeared in each of the different years. Now, to bring together my concluding points, is being values driven the next evolution of G20? The scope of the G20 has broadened, initially heavily focused on economic matters, and then looking at good governance across our diverse nations. More recently, G20 has looked at broader matters, things that really get to the heart of quality of life for all, whether that's people-centred topics or topics that matter to the sustainability of our planet. As this agenda grows and as challenges become more complex and diverse, so does the need to collaborate even more effectively. To enable that greater level of collaboration, I'd like to bring us back to the types of cooperation I mentioned earlier. On the left-hand side, you can see the most basic form of cooperation. At the opposite end of the spectrum, being more values aligned, understanding each other at a deeper level. This takes place where the environment, the culture, achieves a deeper understanding of what's important to all parties. This level of cultural development is happening everywhere, in teams, organisations, and even whole nations. I see evidence all of the time of organisations and institutions being more values-driven. In Indonesia, they recently undertook a national values assessment, like many other countries, and some even measuring character as well as values, all to create a deeper understanding to enable people to be supported and nurtured in the right direction. So G20 have the opportunity to take this approach at a global level, to shift the dial to the right, to take a leadership position as a highly respected institution, to evolve to the next level that enables even stronger even more effective collaboration at a time when there are many challenges. We have suggested some specific actions to take this forward, and these are clearly detailed in the communiqué. We see an opportunity ahead for G20 to lead the way in being truly values-driven, to operate in an environment where there is agreement on common values. There is clarity on the unique values across nations, and there is understanding on the values of difference, the things that can get in the way. Operating with this level of deep understanding enables a powerful connection between parties, creating the conditions for the best form of collaboration, for authenticity, and ultimately the achievement of successful outcomes in a world that is increasingly complex yet connected. Values bring us together, and those connections make those connections even stronger for the benefit of all life. Thank you. Terima kasih. So in this next part of the session, I'm welcomed by three panelists, Dr. Saad from Saudi Arabia, Dr. Ghazi from Saudi Arabia, and Dr. Iwan, who's joining us online from Indonesia. Dr. Saad, I'd like to come to you first. I know from the work that you've done over decades that you've worked with many organisations and many institutions at a high level on this topic of values awareness. I'd like for you to share with us how you see the current setting. What is your understanding of where organisations currently are in really taking forward this topic?
Thank you, my dear. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. First of all, I would like to thank the Indonesian government to invite me for this summit, and I'm very glad to be today with my friend Dr. Ghazi and also my friend Dr. Iwan and more. Okay. And also thank for the audience. It's a very nice weather now and a green school. I like it so much. To describe the situation on value, it's not easy job at all, because it's need surveys, scientific surveys, and collect the data, then we can describe the current situation very clear. But in my opinion, and based on my experience, I can say, summarize some points to describe the current situation in the value and empower the value. First of all, thanks for the God, there is a trend and interest in the value, and our summit today is one of the evidence for this interest and also for the new trend in the world to care about the value. And also there is a lot of, in the organization, they are now moving to the value, but it's not that level what we are dream on it. The second is the interest. It's only on the high level, it's not go for deep. It's not a holistic approach. This is what I see. Of course, there is a good efforts from a lot of people. They are talking about value, but if I will say how we can describe or how we can define the value, I think this is the point. That's mean we hear before in the first session that the integrity is the value number one, and also based in our research, we did a research on 20,000 organizations in the world and collect the values in different sectors, and we analyze the value and we come with common value in the world and each sector. The integrity is number one in the world. But I think this is not enough to say integrity. If I will ask anyone from you, what's the integrity? Could you explain the integrity? Maybe he can talk within 1 or 2 minutes. But this is not enough to make it, to implement the integrity as a behavioral. Leave the integrity. The most value popular is in the world is the love. Okay, what's the love? Are we understanding what's the love? What's the meaning of the love? What's the deep meaning of the love? This is the first point. The second, I don't see a government body, its mandate is the value. Now, V20, it's a body, but it's not a government body in the countries. And also, I don't see a department in the organization. Also, the mandate for this department is to improve the value. And if you will see the organizing structure for the corporate institution, you will not find a place for the value. You can find equality, you can find strategic planning, you can find excellency, but you cannot find the value. Also, if we will talk about the capacity building in this area, there is a few program or diploma take care about value and teaching value in the world. We do a lot of research. There is, of course, good initiatives in some of the universities or in consulting firm or on the training center, but it's not enough. There is a lack on this area. And for this lack, there is a lack also in the specialist in the value. We don't find a specialist in the value. Did you hear about value officer or value manager or someone professional in the value and he can empower and enable the value in the association or in the organization? For me, I don't see more enough. Maybe I saw some, but it's not enough. If we also go to the management theories, you will find a lot of theories and models on strategy and quality, but you will not find enough models in value. How to empower the value in the organization or in the association. And this is also another lack. We should do a lot. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Saad. I've got one more question for you before I invite comments from Dr. Iwan, if he can join us online. I liked how you expressed how difficult and challenging it is for organizations to become more values aware, more values driven, but also the simplicity of it, because this is core to who we are. So how hard can it be? I wonder, there'll be many leaders in our audience at different stages in their career. What advice can you give them if they're curious and want to take this forward within their own setting? What piece of advice could you share with them?
It's not Dr. Iwan's, for me. There is a lot we can do. I suggest, first of all, to do a government body and its mandate to empower the value in the whole the country and customize the model for each country. And also, the governments should encourage the ministers to also establish a department for value in each organization. Also the private sector and non-profit sector. Even the non-profit sector, I don't find in their organization a value, even this sector based on the value. And also to encourage the university and the consulting firm to do more research and create more models how we will empower the value, how we will take the value from a verbal to a practice. This is the important thing, not only just saying values without a practice, that's mean nothing. The awareness also, and this is kind of awareness for the audience, the awareness, what I saw, it's only a campaigns within 1 week or 2 weeks. This is not enough. The awareness, it should be continuous in all the year about how the value is important for us, for our countries, for our association.
Thank you, Dr. Saad. Thank you for sharing your many years of experience and wisdom, and I'll come back to you at the end for a final word. Now, do we have Dr. Iwan dialing in? Is he joining us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Dr. Iwan. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi.
I hope you're well.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've heard a lot this morning already about the great work happening in Indonesia in terms of values awareness, national values assessment, the 5 core values that you're taking forward. I'm really keen to hear from your perspective in your role in education, how you see values playing a part in education, values for young people.
It is the most important thing. I think we know there's a quote, after several years or many years of finishing the school, what remains is the character. So I think the government of Indonesia, we decided to shift in 2019, before COVID, that our national education should focus on the most foundational competencies and character, so literacy, numeracy, and character, in which that we send the signal that for the era of disruption, where disruption is the new normal, then the ability to continuously learn in whatever context is very important. So the ability to receive the information critically and also produce information responsibly, and also the character, like Dr. Saad was saying, the integrity is very important. And of course, on top of that is our ability to acknowledge and to value diversity. I think diversity is one of the most important fundamental value that we need to have. Our appreciation to diversity. So we have a motto in Indonesia called Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which translates to English is unity in diversity. So in this, our founding fathers mentioned about or envision a country that has hundreds of cultures, not to be like a melting pot, but each of these ethnic culture becomes the Indonesian culture. So it's more like a toast salad philosophy. So without diminishing the properties of or uniqueness of their own cultural tradition. So, and I actually imagine this more like in a solar system. where we have like the sun and all different planets, and the planets have their own way, their own orbit. They rotate in its own axis, and they also rotate along the sun, and then it's the speed is different. They have like different story. So my point here is that each culture is unique. They have their own way, but then the most important part is we are together in the sun represents to me is our humanity, our common humanity. So how we can, even though like we have difference, you cannot make Earth to become Mars. You cannot make Mars becomes Jupiter. Jupiter is Jupiter, Mars is Mars. But then we are together in our search for a common humanity among us. So I think that is what is very important. And I think in Indonesia, our education system transformation, which is called emancipated learning, we want to equip our students with the ability to appreciate diversity, which we call the global part of the global citizenship competency, and of course the critical thinking, the forces, creativity, collaboration, ability to problem solve, and also gotong royong. I think that's another part that is very uniquely Indonesian. The value of gotong royong is very much our foundation as a nation. Although we have hundreds of different cultures, but gotong royong is everywhere in Indonesia. And gotong royong is actually one of the core value that is agreed by the education working group in G20 as the core framework for education recovery. Gotong royong basically it means work and help each other with a sense of empathy, and there's also a sense of social responsibility. So in Indonesia, communities can get together with the ethos of selflessness and concern for the common good to solve problems together, even though it's not directly related to you, but you're helping others because you feel like that is part of your community. And of course, in return, when you have problems, the members of the community will also get together to help you and help each other. And that is like the reciprocity, I think, goes on and on. And through this gotong royong spirit, although we have a lot of diversity, we try to strengthen or enhance the solidarity and cooperation among various differences that we have. And in the G20 Education Working Group, the member countries, as well as the special invitees, really appreciate this, and they see that this also reflects not only during the pandemic, because during the pandemic we also actually applied, no matter where you are in the world, the spirit of gotong royong is actually there, because you are concerned with each other. Your action has implication towards others, so we are taking care of each other. We protect our family, we protect our friends, our neighbors. We help them. We provide medicine. Those who are in self-isolation, we raise funds for medical workers to support them in their efforts. And many others. And although, because there is a sense of empathy and social responsibility, and this is what we were trying to, again, like instill for our students, which is our human resources for the future. But I think Dr. Saad is right. We are not doing this enough, and I think we need to do this more. And awareness is not enough. So hopefully we can continue to do better work going forward together as the global village.
Thank you, Dr. Iwan. You do talk with such passion and sincerity. It's really great to listen to you. Your passion about the importance of measuring not just values but character as well. And then how you shared with us all of the beautiful cultural nuances of Indonesia. I wonder, when you heard me speak earlier and express what I'm advocating for the G20 to do, to align on a common set of values, to have clarity on unique values across nations, and also understand, the differences. I guess Indonesia has a lot to share in terms of the learning that you've been through as a nation, because you're so diverse and so richly diverse. So what advice would you share to the G20 community on that basis?
Yeah, this is, of course, I think in G20, especially this year, I think it's quite challenging, to be honest. But I think that makes us reflect on what do we really value as a collective group in G20. Of course, at the end of the day, I think we need to really search for our common humanity with each other, because what we're doing impacting each other. We are living in very much interdependent world. So this is our shared global village. This is, yes, for some reason, historical reasons, we are split into countries and nations and ethnicities. But at the end of the day, human beings are human beings. No matter where you're from, no matter what color of your skin, no matter what country that you're born in, I think human beings are human beings. We are much more alike than we are different. And we care about our planet. I think this is something that we also need to really emphasize in G20. So, of course, it's not easy to get there, but I think the spirit of collaboration is definitely there in G20. The gotong royong, I think, as I mentioned in our education working group, was for me it was quite surprising, because it started with the minister just talk about gotong royong at his first speech in the first meeting, and then repeated, echoed by some countries after that, and then the second meeting suddenly became one of the central concept, and then it was the framework for our in our report for education recovery. So I think this spirit of there is a sense of solidarity and partnership that we are in this together for our shared global village. I think it's very important for the G20 countries to have and to see we are here for our common humanity, that we are in this together. And, like that is, I think it's in the United Nations. I think we have talked about that. And I think in G20, we can work on that as well. And it will be great. I really value the work, by the way, for the V20. It's been wonderful. I really learned a lot from, I'm very humbled here with the distinguished panelists, Dr. Saad and Dr. Ghazi, and also with you, Pamela, with your work. It's amazing. And I think let's move forward with this. Let's be together in our common humanity. I think I'd like to quote our father of education saying, we are searching for the best ways to the same goal, which is the highest human happiness. Let's go for that together.
Thank you, Dr. Iwan. Thank you, that was so inspiring. And thank you for making the link to us from talking from a national perspective and now want to shift to more of a global perspective and bring in Dr. Ghazi. Ghazi, you have many roles, and not least you were the V20 Sherpa in 2020 when Saudi Arabia held the G20 presidency, when of course V20 emerged as a new engagement group. I'd really like to ask you an initial question on, how do you see the challenges at a global level? So if we had the G20 leaders in the room today listening to our words, listening to our presentation, what do you think the challenges are at that level?
Good afternoon to all. First of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here, to be in person in Bali, Indonesia. And maybe it's very fitting that I begin to answer your question at a personal level. I am in awe at the setting where I'm at right now. We're in the middle of a beautiful school that has a different model, very value-centric, with emotions that are very difficult to capture in words, and extremely difficult to take to someone who's not here with us today. So your question on the global challenge is very much related to the experience that I'm having now, or lack of, for many people. I'd like to answer your question on a personal level, on the organizational level, and then the global level. So on a personal level, if our existence, for whatever reason, reduces to a poor Xerox copy of what we are inside, how can we expect a collection of poor Xerox copies to build edifices that can change the world or build the destiny of humanity? The first challenge for an organization like the V20 is to restore the holism of the human existence, and to have that exercise not be seen as something to be done on the side, or when the resources are abandoned, or when the wars are all finished. It's precisely to prevent more wars and more destruction that we need to begin to put that human question at the center today. It's easier said than done, because the first challenge of it actually exists within each of us. You'll find that when it comes to values, each of us feels strongly about a set of ideals, but the justification actually does not begin with the politicians. It begins with us explaining away why we cannot have the rich life we ought to have because of all the practical considerations that we need to go through. Either securing more money, or getting a better education, or somehow knowing the right people, or where am I gonna even begin to answer my calling when my calling doesn't seem to be related to anything practical that can earn my existence. A challenge for a V20 Sherpa is to take these central, meaningful issues for a human being and figure out how to make them relevant to the policy makers and the decision makers, so that they see it's in their self-interest to embrace that moving forward in creating a world that not only gives them the wins they seek, but the wins that the citizens seek everywhere in the world. On an organizational level, in many ways, if we viewed organizations like human beings with character, are we capable of making these organizations more value aware before they become value affirming, or before they begin to battle each other for values that they don't clearly understand, like so many of the speakers today have expressed? And so the challenge, in the midst of all the KPIs that they have to deliver, and every organization, whether for-profit, not-for-profit, increasingly by a culture of productivity, is being taken away from a centricity on what is meaningful to a centricity of what is quantifiable. And somehow we have to bridge that gap. And we have to somehow figure out a way where both are not seen in conflict, but both are allowing us to reach the same goal with a richness that would not be reached unless we are more aware of what we hold dear to our hearts. If, in fact, we are successful to bring that awareness to the level of decision makers, and our proposal in the V20 is that by becoming official, we would like a recognition of differences of a set of values that ought to become universal to all 20 nations, if not all nations of the world, and separate those clearly from another set of values that rightfully should be celebrated by every nation, by every group, by every human being, because these are the values that make me different than the other person. And the relevance and the key and the secret is in achieving both. How can we go about doing that? Take a few of the challenges we dealt with recently. COVID, the war in Ukraine, and the fact that the world, the way we are managing it right now, is about to enter a recession from which so many people may end up in such level of poverty that it doesn't just set the agenda back on the ability to provide a better quality of life for people. So many other agendas that are important for the wellness of the planet, like the environment, suddenly take the back burner because we are not able to deal with conflicts in an effective way. We believe that by creating bodies of dialogue, and here's the important significant thing, is what Values 20 is not about is one group of people imposing its values on the other. It is more about a quality of dialogue that is inclusive, and there are a lot of practical mechanisms that already exist in the world that we can learn from. For example, I was in a dialogue last night, with the Sherpa or the chairman for the Labor 20 in Indonesia. The ILO, International Labour Organization, worldwide has a model called tripartite. It's a model centered on the necessity of the dialogue between government, labor, and business owners, in the belief that when the pillars of production talk and align, not just their interests, but their values and their vision, they're better able to create an economy that will generate more jobs and better jobs for everyone. If, for example, we are able to convince the decision makers at the G20 to adopt existing models like tripartite, it already exists. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're simply taking what's good, what's miraculous. It's miraculous not because it cannot happen, it's miraculous because as human beings we got it right. If instead of making that the exception, we can make that what is common and what determines our day-to-day existence, then we believe we can push the course forward of ensuring a better quality of life for people.
Thank you so much, Ghazi. I really appreciate how you emphasize the point that, you know, V20 and all the work that we're doing is not about trying to align on a set of values strictly across nations. Far from it. It's about that quality dialogue. And you've made me think of a question. A good friend once taught me many years ago about the power of soul-to-soul communication and how you can understand each other with dialogue that goes beyond the words. So is that a skill that we need to develop further?
100%. I've mentioned COVID. We often talk about how COVID made us, as nations, retract into self-defensive policies so each of us can protect our economies. But what that does when we do that is if everybody is concerned about defending their economy, the entire picture of the global economy collapses. And while policymakers are talking about how we can negotiate between how to restore faith in multilateralism while still serving our own self-interest, I find your question very interesting, because what no one has spoken about is what happens when policymakers who make decisions for our organizations, our countries, stop talking to each other face to face, so they're not able to touch each other or hug each other, and instead are talking over the screen. Is it any wonder that suddenly the decisions seem to escalate to something that may look like World War III? Well, the reversal of that may be in a hug that a leader can have another, and that isn't as crazy as it sounds. Innate and instinctive in us, in human beings, from years and years of evolution, is the need for a human-to-human expression. Now, something as simple as that, when absent, imagine the negative consequences that can happen. And yet, policymakers centered on trying to salvage the economies of each of our countries seem to be forgetful of something so simple, and I can understand why. In the midst of all the pressure, you seem to want to focus on rational priorities that are justified by material evidence. But it completely misses the point that human beings are more than that body that you see. There's something more to our soul, and it determines not only our existence, our sense of purpose, our sense of want, our sense of wonderment. And no matter what we do, we cannot bypass the need to do that. So central, I believe, to the work of the V20 is not just the policy documents that will be written, but to think creatively of the platforms that will increase positive, affirmative engagement between different nations, between different segments of the population of a nation, and to capture via techniques and methodologies like crowdsourcing the voice of the citizen. It cannot be lost in the midst of the noise. At the end of the day, we claim to be doing it all so that a human soul experiences a better life.
Thank you, Ghazi. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'd like to come back to all three of you with one final question and for a short response. So Ghazi, I'll come to you first. This year, the theme for V20 is values at the centre. We've been on quite a journey over the last 3 years, and we're fortunate to have our friends from India in the room with us today who are taking the baton from us and already have very strong plans in place. Ghazi, my question to you is really more of a personal one. What does values at the centre mean for you personally?
For me personally, it's a restoration of the belief in the human potential and the belief in life and the belief in the universe in which we exist. And therefore, a missed opportunity is a missed opportunity of any part of the expression of the universe not living its wholeness. However philosophical that may sound, it is my life calling to make people realize that there is no calling more pragmatic than that, and there is not a way to shortcut that by whatever other practicalities we may believe. We may try 1,000,001 approaches, but until we make that centrality center, it won't happen. And I believe the V20's work, starting from Saudi Arabia, moving to Italy, now in Indonesia, next year in India, is slowly generating the belief that there is a value for values. And it needs to be put in action by making the initiatives that come out of the V20 and the G20 relevant for constituencies worldwide, not just the countries of the G20, all countries and countries of the world. This year, with values at the center, it's the wholesome belief that if each of us just works on their presence and make it real, it immediately changes the interact that you'll have with the colleague standing in front of you. Imagine what that would do with the world, and it doesn't cost a thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ghazi. Dr. Iwan, my question for you, representing Indonesia for us in this session, with all of the great work that Indonesia have been doing and continue to do on values awareness across your diverse nation, what would it mean to you for V20 to become an official engagement group of the G20?
Thank you, Pamela, for the question. I think it is a good idea, and I think it I think represents the spirit for us to put values at the center. But more importantly, I think if we want to continue our work from this year, the most important thing I think is what Dr. Ghazi mentioned earlier about not just about the awareness, but it should be part of the decision making. So if we think about the next presidency or presidencies, I think how we can make our core values, I think more of like Dr. Ghazi was saying, like the very engaging, honest, sincere dialogue when we make decisions in all like either finance track, Sherpa track, engagement groups, working groups, engagement groups, and have this characteristic that make us as a G20 together to think about our impact to the greater good for the common humanity. I think this is something that needs to be strengthened for the future. I think it is possible to make it an engagement group, and I think it's a good idea. Of course, this is up to the India as the next presidency, but I think I support that idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Iwan. And lastly, Dr. Saad, I'd like to come back to you. Thank you for listening patiently to Dr. Iwan and Dr. Ghazi. I'd like to give you the last word of this session.
Thank you. I am the first and also I am the last. You have the values. Let's make it simple. What's our purpose? What's our country's purpose? What's our leader's purpose? Actually, to achieve the country vision. And how to achieve the country vision? Without value, you cannot. In Saudi Arabia, the vision of Saudi Arabia 2030, the main pillar and the vision is the value. For that, if we would like to move for action and to achieve our purpose, our strategic goals, our vision, it should be driven by our values. And let's say V to V. Thank you.
I like that. Values to values. Thank you, Dr. Saad. That's the end of this session. I'd like to say a big thank you to our inspiring and excellent speakers, Dr. Saad, Dr. Iwan, and Dr. Ghazi. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you for you also. Thank you very much.
And now we would like to invite all the panelists and speakers to take a picture together. Okay. Including
Kindly.
Dr. Iwan,
Yes.
who's joining us online. Okay, look to the center. Give us your biggest, best smile.
On our count, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Once more.
Great. Thank you.
So give a big round of applause to all our distinguished speakers, facilitator of the Value Steering Committee panel discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ghazi, Ibu Pamela, Dr. Iwan, and Dr. Saad. Amazing conversation.
All right, as for now, let us roaming around the Green School Bali for the bazaar and festival of food and merchandise.
Yes, it's time for the break of the day. So please also visit our sponsors, partners booth at the Heart of School area.
Heart of School area.
Heart of School area at the host area. You can find the booths of
Kalbe Pharma, which is the largest healthcare provider in Indonesia, who showcase some of their products today on their booth, such as Fitba, Hydro Coco, some supplements Sakatonic, and their free medical checkup.
Also, we have Paragon Technology and Innovation, which have many famous cosmetics. Oh, we have a QR code here that you can scan for the survey. Okay, before we leave the room, let me remind you, please scan this QR code and please fill in the survey after the session. Okay, so we will have this survey after every session. For this one, you can fill in the survey by scanning this QR code. Thank you. Continuing.
Also, yes, we have the
our booths.
Bye Bye Plastic Bag and Utopia that provide a curated sustainable fashion products.
And of course, booth of V20 collaboration project with Jumbo, where you can find special edition of V20 merchandise and essential oils.
Yes, and you can also visit Indica for their interesting, exciting, sustainable mining project.
And we will have the band performing for us too during this break. But the most exciting program that you can exercise is the traditional Indonesian team-based games such as marble relay race atau apa itu bahasa Indonesianya ya? Kelereng.
Main gundu.
Main gundu ya. Also bakyak race, wooden sandal race, and passed it on race, also balloon dance games, gotong royong games, right?
Yes.
Gotong royong games.
We also have the mini workshop, which is free for the first 20 participants that sign up daily. For day one of the V20 2022, we have Chanang, or the Balinese offering. It's located at the art room.
We also have Biobus workshop, solution lecture.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most exciting part of Green School transportation product. They have the biofuel.
Biobus, okay. And then we also have Ganara Art mini workshops located at grade 1 room. But this one is fully booked.
Yes, it's full book already.
Yes.
So once again, please, later on, kindly return to your seat at 3:25 p.m.
We will regroup in the Arc for the third session of Nature
Inspiring Talk
of the V20 2022.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy the break.